We have here a very large 2014 calendar. Now, maybe you have a calendar like this at home. And this one's a nice big calendar, and look at all these blank spaces, all these days here, huh? And all that space, we can fill in our plans, right? Things that we have to do, right? Things that we might want to do, things that might come along. We can fill in our plans. But you know, most of us realize that sometimes our plans are interrupted. Our plans have to be changed. And sometimes it's a small change, like the family picnic that we might plan for July and get ready for, right? What happens on that day? It rains, right? There's a little change in our plans. But sometimes there are changes that are big changes, and they change the course of our lives. And those are the kind of changes that we're talking about in today's gospel. Now, shortly after the birth of Jesus, God appears to Joseph, and he says, "Rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and stay there until I tell you. Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him." So what does Joseph do? Okay, picks things up, takes the family to Egypt. Well, he's in Egypt for a while. God comes again. Okay, now go back to Israel. Fine, okay, going back to Israel. God comes again. Joseph, don't go back to where you were planning to go. Go somewhere else. Okay? Go somewhere else. And this is just the beginning. God appears at least 4 times to tell Joseph to change his plans, to interrupt his plans. All without asking Joseph what he thought about it. Yet Joseph was open to what God was asking him. Joseph adjusted his plans to fit God's plans. And then we don't hear from him again, do we? We don't hear from Joseph. He just seemed to live his life doing what God asks of him. Might sound a little bit like our lives, filled with interruptions. And once again, Joseph had to adjust his plans to do what God was asking him to do. But he went with it. He may well have planned to have a child, but not before marriage. He might have planned he might go down to Bethlehem sometime, but not with a pregnant wife, and certainly not for the baby to be born in a stable. And then it went on from there. But the lesson for us this morning is Joseph adjusted his plans to fit God's plan. Joseph adjusted his plans to fit God's plans. For him, life was about God, not him. Now, all this might remind us of all the changes that come into our lives, right? All the changes of our plans. Yet we too are called to be open to the Lord, open to where the Lord seems to be taking us. What is the Lord putting before us now? Now remember, Joseph was open to God's plan. And so God's will was fulfilled. We have to ask ourselves, how open are we? The choice is ours. Joseph adjusted his plans. How open are we? Choice is ours. Maybe an example from our own times might help. A few weeks ago, I was talking to the mother of a teenage son who had just started college, first year. Well, when he came home for the first time, Thanksgiving, he really wanted to be with his friends in the southwest area of the parish. He was anxious. But then he noticed that some of his friends were in jail. And most of the others seemed to be just hanging out in the streets, doing nothing. And the streets are a conveyor belt to jail. You just hang out on the streets long enough, and that's going to take you right across the street to that jail. His mother said to him, "Son, you have to start a new life. You have to leave those friends. From now on, your friends have to be those in college, not on the streets, not in jail." Now, it's not easy for any of us to leave our friends, and particularly a young person, right? Particularly a young person. These were the only friends he knew. These were guys that he grew up with. Yet he had to leave them and go down a new path because that was right for him. Now we have the new year before us, don't we? Remember our calendar there. All open before us. We have to ask ourselves, now how open am I to God changing my plans? How open and ready am I to do what the Lord seems to be asking of me now? We want to remember that Joseph was already a man of prayer before God started making all those big changes in his life. He was already listening to God. And there's the challenge for us. This year, can we too resolve to spend just a little bit more time in prayer? Just a little bit more time in prayer, so that we too will be listening to God and ready for the changes that God might make in our lives. Even if it's just once a day, taking time and praying to the Lord, saying, "Lord, help me to be open to your plans for me today." Ask the Lord, "Lord, help me to be open to your plans for me today," so that we might be listening when God speaks to us. So we know that that's not always an easy thing, is it? To give up our own plans. So as we prepare now to share in the body and the blood of Christ, let's ask our God for the help and the strength we need to be listening to the Lord and ready to make our plans fit God's plan.